So this is a case study of how small publishers who don't have resources to actually implement global strategies can do so if they band together. And it's something I helped create 2 or 3 years ago called the Independent Scholarly Publishers Group. So it's a case study. Several weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, as I was preparing for this, 3 people independently emailed me, have you seen this post on the Scholarly Kitchen by Joe Esposito? And it's called The Inexorable Path of the Professional Society Publisher. And it was really interesting. I think a little bit, Adrian and I were talking about it, I mean, a little bit, it had a tone of maybe a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but for the purpose of this, I took it very seriously. And here's the link to it. I recommend that everyone reads it. He basically made the argument, following John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, that there are 6 stages and I don't have time to go over all of them, but the 6 stages lead the small society publisher to the inevitable stage 6, which is, quote, as he said, selling out to large commercial publishers. The first stage is simply the pristine society publisher that doesn't have to sell out at all. And then they go through different stages, with stage 5 joining a large university publisher like OUP or Cambridge University Press, and stage 6 joining Elsevier or Wiley, and which is not necessarily a bad thing, but at any rate, he says this is the path that they all go to. I would make a comment. Actually, my last bullet here is a little wrong. I realize that after I'd already given the slides to Adrian. What ISPG, Independent Scholarly Publishers Group, what we deliberately, consciously tried to do when we created it was to give small publishers an opportunity, if they so chose, to band together so that they didn't have to get to stage 5 or 6. In other words, to make them big through collaboration and give them some kind of clout through collaboration, so they didn't have to go to Sage or Elsevier or Wiley. And actually, ISPG, if you read the article, I would make an argument that ISPG itself, the publishers, we do a combination of 2, 3, and 4. So why is it inexorable? What causes this path that causes many small publishers to sell to Elsevier or larger or other large publishers? Not Elsevier, just the largest. Those of you that seen me speak before know that this is kind of my standard argument that moving from print to digital 15 years ago created this inevitable evolution, which this is part of. It was a game changer, and one of the major things that this caused was the perception that universal access, whatever that means, was a right, much like in the U.S. we're arguing medical health care is an absolute right that people should have. Or at least some people make the argument that access to all who need access, whatever that means. Now the obvious result of that is open access, the open access movement. But another path leading towards access is global consortia deals. And consortia grew up in the last 15 years, and they keep growing. Every single year there are more and more consortia. And the argument that large publishers make is it would be very difficult to find someone that really needs access to an Elsevier journal or Walter's Clear journal or a Wiley journal that isn't able to get it. But here's the rub, and this is what leads to the inexorable path. Consortia themselves only work with a critical mass of content. There was a really interesting day-long seminar in London about a year and a half ago that Alps put on, actually maybe 2 years ago, and they brought together small publishers and consortia heads from JISC, I think Denmark, France, to have a discussion. And towards the end of the day, there was actually an argument going back and forth between the consortia heads and the small publishers. And the small publishers were saying, look, we have content that's really good. Why don't you want it? And the consortia heads were saying, we want it. We just, there's thousands of you. There's only 3 or 4 of us. We just don't have time to work with all of you. We suggest if you want, if you really want your content, us to look at your content, you're going to have to get together and make yourself bigger. And that's the key. They just can't. The consortia themselves do not have the resources to deal with all the thousands of small publishers. On the other side, the societies themselves are not resourced they're resourced to think globally, but they're not resourced to execute any sales and marketing globally by themselves. Some of the members of ISPG have one person who does subscriptions, sales, marketing, and then wears 4 or 5 other hats. They certainly can't spend the amount of time that it takes to negotiate with the hundreds of consortia all around the world. So they're limited too. And all of this leads to Joe's path, which you could describe, oversimplifying, as just at the end of the day, they just need to make themselves bigger. The societies themselves need to make themselves bigger, and therefore the easiest way to make themselves bigger is to have a Wiley or an Elsevier or a Wolters Kluwer manage their sales and marketing for them, and other things. So, what is the ISPG collection? What is it made up of? How does it work? By the way, we spent maybe the first month debating what ISPG what the words would mean, and everyone, it is a participatory democracy, and you do a lot of debating, but everyone insisted that the word independent should be in there, because that's the whole motivation for ISPG, is to remain independent and not to join someone else. One of Joe's, of their 20 publishers, there are 51 journals. I would argue that approach is a critical mass, if it's not a critical mass. Stage 3 in Joe's path is publishers decide to join create a technology partnership or collaborate with other publishers on the same platform. Well, the ISPG publishers are all on Highwire. That's one of the defining features of them. So they're all on the same platform. They're all societies. They're all not-for-profits. And what we've done is we've created a global reach through a network of local sales agents around the world. And I'll get into that in the next slide, how that really makes them, I would argue, even more global than journals that are part of the large commercial publishers. And then I kind of sit in the middle. Dragonfly manages is a bridge between the societies and the sales agents. I was telling Adrian, if you could yellow marker a slide, I would highlight this slide. This is the key. This is the slide that I tried to describe what makes these publishers global from a sales and marketing perspective. How does this work? So Dragonfly is a two-way gatekeeper. I tried to look up the digital electronic term, and I couldn't find it, Googling for a little while, that is a communication device where communication is going both ways. Communication comes in, it's a gate something or another. Some of you may know, but communication comes in and goes out. So it's a two-way communication. It's a digital device. That's what I do. That's what Dragonfly does. The communication is with the sales agents and with the publishers. And for this to work, there has to be consistent and tremendous amount of communication, both to the publishers, the independent publishers, and to the sales agents all around the world. On the one hand, the publishers, we sell and we promote the products to the world. This enhances the brand of the publishers in the world and of ISPG, so that in China and Japan and different parts of the world, ISPG is now becoming recognized, and the publishers themselves are more recognized. But that's probably obvious. What's even more interesting, though, is the world, through the communication coming back, actually educates and changes the members of ISPG. And some of the more obvious and superficial, perhaps, changes are The amount of time to get new consortium revenue. When we first started ISPG, I think many of the publishers thought they would, that they would get a tremendous amount of revenue in the first 12 months. Well, many consortia deals take several years before you get the deal. The amount of revenue. Many societies simply don't want to. If you measure the amount of revenue you get in a consortium deal by the amount of revenue per journal, per library, it's quite shocking sometimes to people that aren't involved in it, because the revenue doesn't match up. It's larger when you get all the people, all the libraries to sign up. But that's true whether you join a commercial publisher or not. It's just that in ISPG, they're more aware of it because they know exactly where every single dollar is coming from, every single library and every single dollar. So that's something that they've learned to accommodate. Licensing terms, and this is where every consortium we worked with requires a license, and even though the licenses are fairly similar, but every territory is slightly different, and I'll go over that in a second. And China wants certain things that are in the interest of the Chinese, and the Australians want things that are interested in the Australians. And actually, Australia is a good example. You sign a license with CALL, and then an individual library, which is in Australia, individual libraries don't like that license. They want you to change some things for them. So just having to deal with all of that is quite educational to the publishers. So that's the key thing. I would argue, once again, this is the key slide, that this gateway where the publishers on the one side are constantly communicated to, and they're making decisions collectively on what kind of deals we're going to make, actually, ironically, makes them more global because they're more actively involved in what's going on in each territory in the world. How much time do I have? Okay. Just real quickly then, some of the global trends that you're probably aware of. There's library budget constraints going on all over the world, regardless of whether the economy is in good shape or bad shape. There's more constraints. The large national consortia, I don't know of a single one which is a large national consortium that has been centrally funded, that writes a single checkout, that has not either had their revenue, their funding reduced, or actually cut off. So CRKN is a classic example. The Canadian National Consortium used to be funded by the government. It's now funded by individual libraries. That has huge effects. The more mature consortia are acquiring less. Not only are they acquiring less because they've run out of money to some extent, but they have so many renewals that they only have enough resources to handle the renewals. And the newer consortia, the two newest that I'm aware of that are national, there's one in Japan, one in Mexico. They're proceeding cautiously and actually working with the largest people first. But renewals are still strong. Every time someone's not renewed, you hear about it. It gets circulated. The consortia as a purchasing model is still healthy and growing. And what's new in licensing is we're starting to make concessions to open access. Most of the ISPG publishers, or many of them, have open access journals, and will make part of the deal that will accommodate, give them a break on maybe author fees. Many parts of the world are insisting on local hosting of consocial authors as another part of open access, and then local archiving. China is a perfect example of a place that's more and more insisting on local archiving. Just briefly, and this is the closing part of these next two slides, here's a slide of where we've been successful. I tried to figure out, without attaching agents, because I don't think it really is an agent-related thing. I think that what holds these areas together, Australia, Korea, China, United Kingdom, Sweden, and ECs, they've all been in the consortium business for a very, very, very long time. Kesley in Korea was one of the first deals that Sage got. I think that's what's consistent there. And then I tried to here's areas that we're still hopeful of, but we've been struggling. We haven't gotten as successful as we wanted to, and I put them into two categories. Developing economies. I think everyone has a hard time in India and the Middle East. And then Latin America has been a challenge as well. The economy's in recession. I mean, Europe Southern Europe is almost impossible right now. We did recently get a deal in Sweden, and we're in a JISC, but those are struggles. But Southern Europe, we're almost just going to wait until things sort themselves out. And in North America, I'm not sure it's because it's in recession, they're actually coming out, but I think we could do better. So that's my case study. Thank you very much.